Hey guys, this is Chris with Rekkid Talk with another episode of 5 Rekkids in 5 minutes or possibly less. And so, what's going to be the theme on April 20th? Well, only a hack YouTuber would do something like songs about marijuana on 420. So, I'm going to talk about weed songs today. So, maybe I am a hack. And this actually sort of reminds me of like one of the first like vinyl community videos that I ever made back 2 years ago. First few videos I made was pretty much oblivious to the art. Those of us that are like sort of the micro channels. I knew about big channels then, but that was pretty much it. Um, and so Nick Rudeau had a 420 thread back in 2021. I didn't actually make the video until May. Uh, One of the things I realized looking back at that video is how much grayer my beard has got in the last couple of years. And I'll link that up at the end of the video because it's only gotten 13 views so far. And I've already wasted a minute. So let's start talking about music involving weeds. So we have the Weeds with Just Color. And so this was a recent reissue on Mississippi Records. The band's original name was The Lollipop Shop. And this is Garage Psych from the late 60s. I think the album came out in 1968. It features sort of that Portland garage rock obscure legend Fred Cole, who's put out a lot of stuff with like some of his other groups like Dead Moon and Pierced Arrows, I think. Um, and so it's pretty much like nuggetsy, brown acidy sort of underground psych stuff. I actually like to name the Lollipop Shop better than the Weeds, for whatever that's worth. Next thing we're going to talk about is The Cure. So a few years ago, I got the fancy deluxe 2 CD version of their debut album from 1979, Three Imaginary Boys. I actually grew up with the Boys Don't Cry cassettes, and you can see I got this at Top Notch Records when I was a college undergrad. I remember that the cranky hippie who owned that store would always talk smack about The Cure. And I was buying a lot of Cure then because that's when I really discovered them and was going back into earlier in the 80s in their catalog. And so the last song, track number 13 on Three Imaginary Boys, is called The Weedy Burton. And the Weedy Burton's only like a minute, minute and a half long. It's an instrumental. It's sort of loungy. It's sort of weird. Doesn't sound like The Cure at all. I have no idea why it's on the album. I did a video a few weeks ago called Their Last Song is the Best Song. I would never put that on here. And not surprisingly, when they cobbled together Boys Don't Cry with tracks from Three Imaginary Boys and also some singles, that was certainly one of the songs they chose to leave off. We have, of course, got Sebadoh, and so I have the Freed Weed, and so this is a compilation of early, late 80s material, Weed Forestin and the Freed Man. So there's lots of Freed, and there's lots of Weed, and there's lots of angst, because Lou Barlow was super angsty back at that time period. Um, Lots of songs, lo-fi, um, reminiscent of what early Sebadoh sounds like. Obviously got cleaner as they went along. We have a band called Seaweed, which is part a punk band from the 90s. Their song's called Baggage. This is part of this Live at Emos collection. So Emos was a club in Austin, Texas. And at some point I picked this up. And so you got bands like Digits and Fuck Emos and Cows. And of course, as I mentioned, Seaweed. So it's all kind of your obscure 90s punkish sort of stuff. And finally, at 420, we get to Modest Mouse, The Moon in Antarctica. The second to the last song on the album's called Life Like Weeds. I didn't really have any memory of that song. I re-listened to it right before making this video. It pretty much sounds like a bog standard towards the end of the Modest Mouse CD track. Nothing terribly memorable about that particular track. But anyway, there's my trip into songs about weed on April 20th. I'll link up that old video for you.